Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we're looking at The Botany of Desire by Michael Pollan, journalist and author, and he's also professor of the practice of nonfiction at Harvard University. Michael Pollan is known for his talks and writing on the natural world, and mostly on food and agriculture, and also on the topic of psychedelics. Some of his many books, besides The Botany of Desire, include How to Change Your Mind, This Is Your Mind on Plants, and The Omnivore's Dilemma. This Is Your Mind on Plants being the only one of these that I've read before, but I did like it. I'm trying to read more books on the plant kingdom, so if you guys know of any really good books on botany or trees or horticulture or agriculture, let us know in the comments. You know, I'm always looking for good books. This Is Your Mind on Plants was a fun little dive into humanity's and Michael's personal relationship between three psychoactive plants, the coffee tree, peyote, and poppies. And I read that book before I started doing reviews, but I enjoyed it enough to buy these other books. And with The Botany of Desire, it was nice to revisit Michael Pollan's writing approach, which we'll get into. Normally, I try to pick books that haven't been reviewed by many people, but The Botany of Desire is a book that's been around for a while, and a number of people have reviewed it on YouTube. And whenever this is the case, I watch these reviews and I try to put extra effort into bringing forth new aspects that the other reviewers didn't mention. So, The Botany of Desire, much like with This Is Your Mind on Plants, the structure of the book is built around a select few plants. We have apples, tulips, cannabis, and potatoes. And Michael links these four plants to the theme of desire, each plant focusing on a specific desire. For apples, it's sweetness. For the tulip, the desire is beauty. For cannabis, the desire is intoxication. And for potatoes, the desire is control. This is already a pretty interesting idea, but to double down on the depth of this concept, Michael repeatedly and I think intriguingly returns to the question of just whose desire are we talking about? And what I mean is, take the tulip with the desire of beauty. We grow them for their beauty, yes, but more to the point, the flower evolved that trait, which we have come to identify as beautiful, and it has done so in order to attract pollinators, and in doing that has caught the attention of a certain bipedal ape. And how has this strategy been working for the tulip? Well, the tulip can be found everywhere across the entire globe, so the strategy must be working pretty well. To explore this further, we can look at how we're cultivating each of these four plants on a wide scale. So then, is it us controlling these plants, or are they using us to facilitate their propagation? If so, it's working pretty well, isn't it? The name of the game is said to be spreading your DNA as far and wide as you can, and these plants were all around well before us in some form or another. So maybe it's them who are the ones making these things happen. Now, an evolutionary biologist might tell you this is just another way to look at things. Don't get too caught up in who's actually doing what. But we see this concept revisited again and again with each of our four plants, and Pollan does a great job inciting thought on these questions. And I appreciate that he leans heavily into it because these are the reasons evolution has happened as it did. Of course, it's not the whole story, but this is just one book. In the introduction of this book, Pollan makes an incredibly important point, which is one that not that many nature writers make sure to include. And it's something that, if you really understand this point, you're going to get so much more out of this book and any other book that talks about evolution. And the point is this: when talking about why things evolved the way they did, actually, the appropriate word would be how. When talking about how things evolved the way they did, biologists will use language that make it sound like these plants were making conscious decisions and acting with agency. They might say the plant experimented with proteins until it hit on the perfect combination for its local conditions, or something like that. But this is done just for the sake of linguistic economy, because it would take forever to actually explain all of the details every time they made these kinds of points, and Pollan does a good job addressing this. Most authors assume that readers already understand this, but I wonder how much confusion is caused in other books by not clearing this up. So many of these books are popular bestsellers that are read by everyone. That includes people whose expertise is in other areas. As far as I can tell, most people don't study evolution, but I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was nice to see him cover it in the Botany of Desire. Pollan also has a knack for blending a poetic approach into his journalistic writing. There are a couple times where he just full blown goes into art mode in his writing. It's, I wouldn't say jarring, but it is an abrupt and stark contrast between writing styles when it does come up. To me, it felt like you're reading things that were written in two very different states of mind. I don't want to speculate too much on what those states are, but mind you, there's a chapter on cannabis in this book, and I don't know, draw your own conclusions. And if you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. This art mode also pops up in a different way throughout the book. In the Apple chapter, we spend most of our time learning about Johnny Appleseed, what he was like, and what it was like in his time and place, and the work that he did, and the rise of all the different varieties of apple in America around that time. And as a journalist, Pollan spent a lot of time meeting with people to develop the material for this book. One of these people was this guy who was like an authority on Johnny Appleseed, and Pollan writes about the time that he spent with this guy. Anyways, halfway through the chapter, Pollan draws a connection between Johnny Appleseed and Dionysus, the Greek god, and then Apollo comes up. And throughout the different chapters, Pollan will elaborate on connections between themes in each chapter with Dionysus and Apollo. I guess he wanted to just tack on this extra literary device. I don't know. I could see how people would be amused by this, but it didn't mean anything to me. I just kept thinking, where is this coming from? It felt a bit contrived. But each chapter is fairly similar. We learn all kinds of interesting things about each plant and situations surrounding them. We get some insightful looks into the evolution of the plant and how the plants themselves and the life forms that interact with each of them affect each other. We get a deep dive into Pollan's poetic interpretation of things, and you get the comparisons with Dionysus and Apollo for good measure. But I learned so many interesting things from this book, and this is reason enough to read The Botany of Desire. Though I didn't care for all of the stylistic choices, I feel that Pollan is a pretty gifted writer. He does such a good job of bringing you into his work, and I think most readers will most appreciate Pollan's first-person narrative sections, and there's some pretty funny parts in this book too. But each of the different writing styles in this book are done well. There's a reason this guy is regarded so highly as an author, and this book will make you want to eat apples, admire a tulip, grow cannabis, and eat potatoes. I don't even use cannabis, and this book made me want to. Well, it made me want to grow each of these plants that he talks about. And Pollan is an avid gardener, and part of the strength of his writing comes from his experience growing plants. He states that he has grown all of the plants discussed in this book, and if you've ever grown a plant, I think this book will speak to you in an even more relatable way. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed revisiting Michael Pollan's writing, and I've already started reading another one of his books, The Omnivore's Dilemma. If you have any interest in plants in general, you should probably enjoy this book. And I think Pollan is just a very engaging writer. If that sounds like something you might enjoy, check out The Botany of Desire by Michael Pollan.